What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Friday, August 27th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top DFS picks for today's MLB slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 15-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the pitcher position. Again, just like yesterday, I'm not going to mess around at pitcher. I like Garrett Cole with an 11% pitching advantage over a low-salary batting team, the Oakland Athletics. Garrett Cole is only giving up a .554 OPS versus righties, and he's facing 6 righties here tonight. On top of that, the Athletics have only hit 15 of his last 88 pitches. That's a 170 batting average and a pretty big sample size. So Garrett Cole is $11,200 FanDuel salary, and he's $700 less on DraftKings. But guys, there's a lot of value on this slate, which I'm going to go through in the next positions. I'm going to give you a lot of value plays here in this video, so you're going to be able to fit Garrett Cole in your lineup, no problem. And he's projected at 37 fantasy points here tonight. He has an ERA of 2.92. His record is 12-6 on the season, pitching an average of 99 pitches per game, averaging 43 fantasy points per game. He scored 46, 47, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Garrett Cole here versus the Oakland Athletics. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher first base position. I'm going to give you 2 value plays here. This is a super value play. Take a look at Trey Barrera with an 81% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Rich Hill. Trey Barrera is batting 66% better versus lefty pitchers. He's batting a 1.495 OPS versus lefties. And Rich Hill, he pitches 15% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .645 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Hill yet, and Trey Barrera is only $2,200 FanDuel salary and $100 more on DraftKings. Projected at 8.9 fantasy points here tonight. He's averaging 7 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 3, 28, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Trey Barrera as a value play here versus Rich Hill. Okay, another value play. Now, this is a value play mostly on FanDuel. I like Alejandro Kirk with a 35% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Matt Manning. Alejandro Kirk is batting 39% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .987 OPS versus righties, and Matt Manning is giving up a .825 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Manning yet, and Alejandro Kirk is only $2,100 FanDuel salary. Now he's $1,600 more on DraftKings, projected at 8.7 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 7 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 9, 7, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Alejandro Kirk here versus Matt Manning. Okay, let's take a look at the second base position. I like Kiki Hernandez with a 32% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Logan Allen. Kiki Hernandez is batting 7% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .783 OPS versus lefties. And Logan Allen, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, 24% worse than his other pitches, giving up a 1.081 OPS versus righties. Kiki Hernandez is 1-for-1 versus Allen with a 2 OPS, and he's $3,600 FanDuel salary and $700 more on DraftKings. Projected at 10.4 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season, and he's been on fire, scoring 12, 31, and 28 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Kiki Hernandez here versus Logan Allen. Okay, here's another value play for you. I like Luis Urias with a 65% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Andrew Albers. Luis Urias is batting 10% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .742 OPS versus lefties. And Andrew Albers, he pitches his worst ball by far to righty batters, 55% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .953 OPS versus righties. Now, Luis Urias is only $2,400 FanDuel salary. He's $1,300 more on DraftKings, projected at 8.6 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 19, 7, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Luis Urias here versus Andrew Albers.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I like Ke'Bryan Hayes with a 37% batting advantage over J.A. Happ. Ke'Bryan Hayes is batting 15% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.014 OPS versus lefties. And J.A. Happ, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, 22% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .852 OPS versus righties. Now, the only thing I don't like about this pick is that Ke'Bryan Hayes is 0 for 5 versus Happ, but the splits are great and the price is good. Ke'Bryan Hayes is only $2,800 FanDuel salary and $1,300 more on DraftKings, projected at 11.4 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 9, 9, and 15 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Ke'Bryan Hayes here versus J.A. Happ. Okay, now here's a value play on FanDuel. He's just consistently underpriced on FanDuel. Take a look at Mike Moustakas with a 69% batting advantage over Zach Thompson. Mike Moustakas is batting 36% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .808 OPS versus righties. And Zach Thompson, he pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, 33% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .801 OPS versus lefties. There's no at-bats versus Thompson yet, and Mike Moustakas is only $2,300 FanDuel salary. He's $1,900 more on DraftKings, so I love that FanDuel price. Projected at 9.8 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 0, 16, and 19 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Mike Moustakas here versus Zach Thompson. Okay, let's take a look at the shortstop position. One of my favorite players of all time. I like Xander Bogaerts with a 36% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Logan Allen. Xander Bogaerts is batting 11% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .945 OPS versus lefties. And Logan Allen, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, 24% worse than his other pitches, giving up a 1.081 OPS versus righties. Xander Bogaerts is 1-for-1 with a 2 OPS versus Allen, and he's 4,100 FanDuel salary, 1,600 more on DraftKings, projected at 11.1 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 6, 0, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I think Xander Bogaerts is due for a monster game here tonight, one of my favorite players on the slate. So I like Xander Bogaerts here versus Logan Allen. I also like Miguel Rojas with a 105% batting advantage over Wade Miley. Miguel Rojas is batting 44% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.180 OPS versus lefties. And Wade Miley, he pitches his worst ball by far to righty batters, 60% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .918 OPS versus righties. Now, the one thing I don't like about this pick is Miguel Rojas is 0-for-6 versus Miley, but the splits are fantastic, and he's only 2,700 FanDuel salary. He's 1,500 more on DraftKings, projected at 10.8 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 28, 0, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Miguel Rojas here versus Wade Miley. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. I like Bryce Harper with a 49% batting advantage over Taylor Widener. Bryce Harper is batting 12% better versus righty pitchers, batting a 1.008 OPS versus righties. And Taylor Widener, he pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, 37% worse than his other pitches, giving up a 1.010 OPS versus lefties. Bryce Harper is 1-for-1 versus Widener with a 5 OPS because that one hit was for a home run. He's 4,100 FanDuel salary, 2,300 more on DraftKings, projected at 12.2 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 13 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 25, 28, and 3 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Bryce Harper here versus Taylor Widener. I also like Frank Schwindel with a 39% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Dallas Keuchel. Frank Schwindel, he's batting 33% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.219 OPS versus lefties. And Dallas Keuchel, he's giving up a .632 OPS versus righties. Now, there's no at-bats versus Keuchel yet, and Frank Schwindel, he's 3,300 FanDuel salary and 100 less on DraftKings, projected at 13.4 fantasy points here tonight. Seems a little bit high, but hey, that's what they're projecting him at. And he's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 12, 12, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Frank Schwindel here versus Dallas Keuchel. I also like AJ Pollock with a 14% batting advantage over Kyle Freeland. AJ Pollock is batting 21% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.032 OPS versus lefties, and Kyle Freeland is giving up a .768 OPS versus righties. Now I like this pick because AJ Pollock is 10 for 28 with a .357 batting average and a 1.098 OPS versus Freeland. 2 of those 10 hits are for home runs. He's 3,100 FanDuel salary, 1,300 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.6 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 15, 22, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like AJ Pollock here versus Kyle Freeland.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.